cover, we can always go on to a second session. And I think that would, just deepen it and make it absolutely, like a rounded experience for everybody so they know.
Okay.
All right, so we're live and we're streaming on the group, and it's going to be a very interesting talk. I'm here with Melt Esquibel, and he is a descendant of, I'm going to have to really be multilingual today. He's a descendant of the Piwweltha tribe, the American Indian Pueblo, and he's a rainbow warrior. He has a mission and a vision for humanity. And so it's not all just about the heritage and the background of his family and his tribal roots, but it also is a vision for the entire humanity here on this planet, and this planet based on what the shamanic traditions have already in various cultures foreseen is now basically trickling through the ones that are open and connected in spirit, the message that there is something that we can do. And I'm going to share a little bit of an inspiration about this in my background here in my Zoom, which I animated. But those who are more interested in exploring this further can also just go to his website. And maybe you want to give your website so they can actually just go there later and check it out. What is it called?
It's called balancetoe.com, BALANCETOE.com.
Mm-hmm. And so
it's about spiritual awakening.
Yeah, so you are a shamanic teacher, and you help people explore their consciousness, and you're also representing people with legal affairs. Now, whilst I don't want to discuss too much about politics, because we're here to talk about spirit and soul, I would like to invite everybody who is in this open spirit and open mind to just bear that in mind, that we're going to discuss the things about the spiritual mission. And while the spiritual and the public and the political sometimes intermingle, I don't want this to turn into a, I'm for this party, I'm for that party, because we're for the whole party of humanity. So I think this is what we're going to talk about and focus on, and just to keep an open mind and open heart. All right. So I'm going to give you the microphone and invite you to talk a little bit more about who you are. And I think what prompted us to come together was that you said that spirit and soul are not friends. And I wanted you to talk a little bit more about your upbringing and culture and how you come to, to say this, because it was, for me, it was like, interesting, that you would say this, because it sometimes feels like this. It really does, it's like you come into this experience, you're being thrown into this without remembering anything. And you have a contract and you have a mission and you have a vision, which you don't know because you still have to discover it. And then in the meantime, you go through a lot of contrast, and it feels like, oh my God, God must be such a sadist that he's making me go through all of this trouble and pain. So what is up with that?
Well, life is really an interesting experience within itself. And we have many lives within one life, just so that's your thought. A little bit about myself. First of all, I go by BT. My grandmother's named me Balanced Toe. I walk in between the balance of the spirit and light energy, which is feminine energy, which resides on the left side of the human body. And on the right side is the flesh and soul energy of the male energy. And so we're actually, in our traditional beliefs, split in half within the different energies within the dimensional fields and realms. And so I'm what they refer to as a walk-in. Some of you might have heard the term before, but this is my experience of a walk-in. When I was initiated into this culture of Earth, I stepped in at the moment of breath. In other words, I was never in the womb of the parent. And the individual who was supposed to be born at that time chose not to come due to the hardship. And that's one of the opportunities we have within the spiritual realm. We can always opt out before we take the physical body in our traditional belief. And so the circumstances within our family dynamics was too great to leave a void, so to speak, because many times nobody raises the hand or steps in, so to say. And so I stepped in at the moment of breath. When they laid me upon, which what most people refer to as my mother, I broke out in hives and I swelled up, and the doctors thought I was going to die. And so they took me away, and they were doing all sorts of tests trying to figure out what was going on with me. And a few hours later, I kind of started coming back down to a normal person, so to speak, without hives and bumps and things of this nature. And then when they tried to breastfeed me, the milk actually burnt my lips and my throat and almost killed me. And so that's when my grandmother stepped in and knew that I was truly a walk-in of the spiritual entity and not of the physical plane within that moment. And so as we come here to Earth, as you mentioned earlier, there's many areas that we have to look at prior to coming. And within our traditional belief, the spirit and light energies are of the highest frequency connected to source energy. Source energy is what some people would refer to as creator energy or God energy. Then we also are connected to what we refer to as the collectiveness of consciousness. And some people refer to that as the Akashic record. And so that is where we all begin our traveling to Earth first. And when I say we all go into the great library, so to speak, and we say, I'd like to look at different type of life on the planet, and we look at different people's lives. And some lives we actually follow directly, and other lives we just kind of like, this would be a fun way of doing things, so let's try this life. And sometimes it's not always the most pleasant life. Some of us are interested in hardship because we are of spirit and light, and we've never suffered. We've never been through any type of dynamic situation that is life-changing in a spiritual realm, because we are all one. And so there is all good, there is all light, there is all love and compassion. And so those two energies are color-coded in our tradition. The source energy is a purple light. The collectiveness energy is a blue light. Now, when we look at our own individual consciousness, we refer to that as the white light. Now, some of you who are traditionally in the Christian background look at Christ as bringing the Christ white light. And in our tradition, we call him the peacemaker. We have who is our energy as the peacemaker. And so that traditional belief is very strong and very solid within the white light of consciousness. And that is where we believe we were given the actual true identity of free will. Okay, so that's the human choice, not the spiritual choice, but the human choice. The spiritual side will always go ahead and take the high road, so to speak, because it is of spirit. But at the same time, it allows us to go through things on a physical plane, because again, it's our own decision. And so when we look at the spirit and light energy versus the soul and flesh energy, a lot of people think it's one energy. And in our traditional belief, we view them separate. And the reason why we view them separate is because of the frequencies. Think of it from this standpoint. Earth resonates at a certain frequency. Saturn resonates at a certain frequency. In our traditional belief, the name Piwweltha means feather bunch flying to the cosmos. And so we believe each and every one of you out there is an angelic being. Think of that. No matter how you are, no matter what you've done, how people treat you, I view you as an angelic being. Okay. And so that's something that a lot of people have difficulty in, because we are ego based on the flesh and soul side of humanity. And so within that energy, we tend to create, but more of a different sense of manifestation. And so on a spirit and light energy, in our tradition, we don't utilize the word ask like within prayer. I mean, there's many people who pray differently within the cultures, but most people will ask, you know, Creator, give me this, Creator, provide this. In our tradition, we don't believe we have to ask, because we believe, again, we're angelic. We are of source, we are of collectiveness, but yet we have that own individual consciousness to determine what we want to create. And so we're able to go ahead and create through the aspect of gratitude. And so when we look at spirit and light energies versus flesh and soul energies, again, on a flesh and soul side, we tend to think of ourselves as lower beings. On a spiritual and light energy, we look at ourselves as the highest of creation. And so if we are the highest of creation manifested within both sides of our energies, which area do we feed? Normally, most individuals feed the right side, okay, the flesh and soul energy. There's many techniques in the world that are breathing exercises, and they take it all the way down into the solar plex and into the root area. In our tradition, we don't take our breath down that far. We only take it to the area of the heart area, or some people refer to as the heart chakra. Because from the heart energy upward, let it be your throat, your third eye, your crown, we believe that's all of source energy. And so if we're going to be walking this planetary field of frequencies, we'd like to be able to walk it within the highest frequency. So when we breathe and we meditate, we keep that energy here and above. Because we get all the feeling and frustration in our lower energies every day. Some might not recognize it, and some might say it doesn't bother, but frequency resonates no matter who you are or where you are at. And so many people, and within our traditional belief, as I was taught from the age of 5 by my grandmothers, and a lot of this was done in secrecy because my family left the reservation in the early 1920s. And they held on to the medicine of our tribe so that way the religious aspect and the government wouldn't be able to transform our spiritual beliefs. Many times when things are written, they get transformed or interpreted improperly. And so that is one of the main reasons we left the reservation. And so we're kind of the black sheep, you would say, within our tribal area, because we did not remain in the reservation. We chose to leave it because, again, it was the only way we could actually save our heritage, you know, from being disrupted. And so that's one of the main areas that I have a lot of difficulty within some of the nations, because I wasn't raised on the reservation. Although I've been on many reservations and I've worked with many reservations, there's a big animosity towards that, because I don't believe in the aspect of entitlement or control. And I don't believe in corporate governance. I believe we all have that ability to govern ourselves.
Yeah, sovereignty.
Yeah, sovereignty. And that's the most important part right now within, you know, our evolution here on this planet.
Yes.
And so
claiming our own sovereignty as a divine being.
Yes, and when we claim our own sovereignty, it's much different than what traditional belief of sovereignty is. Because sovereignty, in the aspect of traditional belief of definition, if you go to Webster's early first book, 1820s, right in there when it was first produced, the first written language was defined. And so when you look at sovereignty, it isn't just sovereignty of the earth. It's a spiritual sovereignty, and we tend to forget that. Many of us tend to, you know, walk a path of sovereignty, but at the same time, we're not respectful towards Mother Earth. We're not respectful towards our brother or sister. And what we do to ourselves is a matter of choice. It isn't a matter of dictation. And that's why in our traditional belief, we look at the term diversity as the mother of thought, for it allows the individual to create change without fear or without shame. And that's another area that is very useful to control the flesh and soul energy. Mm-hmm. When you're spirit and light and you walk within that path, fear is not anywhere within your path. Because again, spirit in creator source has you surrounded through love and protection, no matter where you go. And so that's one of the areas that a lot of people have difficulty in.
Yeah, well, I think what you touched on before is something that I've discovered myself as well, that especially in the Christian tradition, it is very strongly fear-based, that people are supposed to ask, and the importance that, you know, that I made in discerning this was that when the person is asking, they're always bound to be like in a state of humility, but at the same time, it's really in a you know, twisted turn of events turned into something of, you know, unworthiness. So in a way, people in this teaching are not being taught their worth. They're not being taught the way that God sees his divine children, but in the way that humans want them to be, in a divine state, but disempowered, unknowing of the divinity.
Very well said. Yes.
Yeah, and unaware of how spirit is actually something that they are being, you know, connected to at all times, with their awareness, with their inner guidance, if they're allowing it to come through their heart and through the basic element of shame and not believing in the value, you're turning off that frequency.
Yes, and in our tradition, yes, and in our tradition, we believe that the spirit lies or lives within the heart. And so when we look at the heart energy, and now through science, you know, when I started talking about this back in the 70s, people thought I was crazy, you know, because the science wasn't with our tradition. And so now people can actually feel and calculate frequency and vibration of an individual and their aura space, so to say, their energy space. And so there's much that's changed due to technology. And so we have to be able to accept certain parts of change, but at the same time, we have to be able to really do our research to really understand that it's done proper.
Right. Well, I think this is an incredibly, you know, deep subject. We don't really have much time to dive into this, but I would like to touch on another question, because on your website, I saw that you were writing about, you know, the uncommon sense, and the volume 1 you have as a PDF on your website. And somebody is coming to my door just now. You have to give me 1 second.
That's great.
A lost traveler.
Great.
I was given the opportunity to send somebody on the right path. Isn't that wonderful?
Yes, it is.
So talk a little bit about this. I know I said I didn't want to go into much politics, but I think this is an important subject. So I want you to basically just give us a glimpse of what it is without diving into the, political part too much.
Sure, and actually I can touch base on it without even diving into the political part, okay, which is beautiful. That's the whole purpose of sovereignty within itself.
Mm-hmm.
Each and every one of us are given a opportunity to be here, first of all. What we do with this opportunity is very important. If we choose to come back is very important, because many come down and many never return. And that's what we refer to as a newbie within the spiritual identity or past life energies. And so, sovereignty in itself is very important. The book that I wrote dealt with corporate governance. And so we dove into it very, very deep. I come from a constitutional sheriff, which was my father's side, so to speak. And then on the opposite side, who people refer to as my mother, was a deep state politician. And so when I say deep state politician, I mean the corrupt side of government. And so I grew up in both these realms as a observer, so to say. And so what I did as I got older is I looked at the ability of right and wrong and a decision that I had to make. And it was one of the toughest decisions in my life, because I had to expose corruption within the female mother side of the family that led up all the way up to high political people within the United States government, and which basically destroyed any connection that we would have had. But at the same time, we never did have a true connection of a mother-son connection because of me being a walk-in. I was always on the outside of the energies. And so I never had a curfew, even though I mentioned that earlier when we were talking. I never had a curfew growing up. I was always given free reign, so to speak. I mean, if I stayed out till 2, 3, 4 in the morning, I never got in trouble. I was always, pretty well received no matter where I was at. I did a lot of special time by the river, where I would do my prayer and meditation as a young boy, and things of this nature. And so when I got into the aspect of corporate governance, there's a term that everybody is familiar with, but it's a little bit different than what we are commonly known within our education system. And so this term is called domicile versus the term resident. Now, most people understand you're a resident of a community, okay? And when you're a resident of a community, that means you live within the community, but you have not taken the opportunity to claim your domicile. And only you can claim your domicile. There's 3 actual areas of domicile. Domicile of birth, which means wherever you was born, let it be in the United States, a city, wherever, that is, always will remain your domicile of birth. The next area of domicile is the domicile of law. Now, here in the United States, and I have all the evidence to prove it, and I've never had anybody be able to actually rebut my evidence, because we've gone through thousands and thousands of paperwork dealing with laws and different things within this area of domicile. Domicile of law here in the United States was converted back prior to 1967, where each city, county, and state government, which was a municipal, which worked within the constitutional side versus the corporate side of government, okay? So it was like the balance. It was like the border, the municipal. So we had constitutional on one side, which I refer to as the spiritual side, okay? Mm-hmm. And we have the incorporated side, which I refer to again as the flesh side. Mm-hmm. And so what transpired in 1967 here in the United States prior to that year, every city, county, and state went into what we refer to as full corporate capacity. In other words, they were outside of the true government. Mm-hmm. So they were no longer working in a true municipal government, okay? And so that's where we lost our constitutional principles, because again, if you have a business, as an example, and I come to you and tell you how to run your business, you're going to look at me and go, this is my business, and you're an employee, and I'll take it for consideration, but I don't have to do what you say. And that's what takes place here in the United States currently under the legal system. Now, there's a difference between a legal system and a lawful system. Lawful system is common law, and that's where a true republic form of government resides, under common law. Now, a democracy is the corporation status of government, and so it doesn't lie within that realm as far as true sovereignty. And so corporation status means democracy, common law means republic. And so the book that I wrote basically broke down all the laws, all the guidelines of one particular state where I was at, because of the ability to look at the laws and break them down and bring the information to the general population. And so the sovereignty issue isn't a matter of where the presumption of law overrides your decision of free choice. And so again, when I mentioned earlier, we have domicile of birth, domicile of law. And if you look at, and I believe it's the same way where you're at as well, okay, correct me if I'm wrong. Every governmental ID, when it's issued to you, your name is issued in all caps, okay? And so what that means under here in the United States, under what is referred to as the Administrative Procedure Act of every state, it defines the corporate name. And this is what the corporate name is defined. It says all letters of the English alphabet only include uppercase letters. There's no distinction between typeface or font that will be recognized. So when you see your name in all caps, that there is taken away your spiritual identity. Think of it from this standpoint. In other words, you're no longer a true living being of spiritual identity. You are a flesh and soul, 3D, 4D corporation. And that's huge. I mean, that's huge for those of us.
Yeah, I think this is extremely troublesome for me. And I kind of gather some information and write on a book about the sacredness of soul, because of the fact that we are now facing a attack on this very entity and this very sacredness of our divine spirit and soul connection. So we have a very, very deep war going on, which is exactly what you're talking about. But I think what we don't necessarily get taught is that when we are given this identity, that we are actually being traded off, so that we are basically making money for the government. And this is what we're not being taught. And this is also not the individual's choice, because neither my father or my mother were given that information prior to signing off a birth certificate.
Right. And in most states, the birth certificate, when you look at it, even the marriage license, okay, I don't know how it is over there. I don't know anybody, who's been married over there. But there's like a little clause, and it's always really small letters in print that says it's something. Okay. And so when
can you repeat that, because something interrupted?
There's like a little reference normally on the bottom of the marriage certificate here in the United States, that it says that once this union becomes one, that you are part of the possession of the government, so to say.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so
this was the reason why I did not get married to the father of my 3 children. Nobody knows this. Nobody knows this. But the fact is, I was researching a lot of things during that time. I had so much time on my hand. when I was pregnant and I wasn't working at the time, I just went off and did my thing, and I went to university and wanted to, do another degree, and I kind of just didn't really, believe in this way of a, governmentalized and institutionalized part of the family. And I believe in the spirit of the family, not in the institution.
Yes, yes.
And those are two different things.
Yes, it is. And that's what we teach. I mean, we teach this in our courses, in our classes. We have a short version, and we also have like a 20-hour course. And then we have like a weekly course, a whole week. I mean, all designed, just depending on time frame. But when we go back to the law of domicile of birth and domicile of law, those two. But what happened was they divided it into one more, which is called domicile of choice. Now, most people have never heard of domicile of choice. And this is where an individual basically declares through affidavit where they call home. Let it be the constitutional side of government, let it be the municipal side of government, let it be the corporation side of government. Now, here in the United States in 1934, under Title IV, Section 112 of U.S. Code, they brought out an area called presumption. And so they allow the government under this Title IV, Section 112 U.S. Code, that you are presumed to be what they declare, okay? And so until you change the presumption, you remain there. And so what we do is we teach people how to go ahead and do paperwork to change the presumption within the government standing. And that's a legal term. And some of you might have heard this just recently. Dealing with the court case of political realm that we're going through here in the United States, where Texas was denied a certain aspect within the Supreme Court due to standing. Well, if every form of the United States is working under corporate capacity, you can't dictate another corporation where you want to be. That's why they didn't have standing in our understanding of common law, which our country was founded upon. And so the ruling was correct in my traditional belief of knowledge as far as, law. And so once they change that, and the only way they can change that is that every state, and I have one of them up on my website, citizensofidaho.com. And if you go to the corrupt systems page on the very top, there's a law that was passed for the state of Idaho, which gave the municipal, who had the authority of constitutional, which is your common law, the incorporation side, which is working in business but not breaking constitutional law. They gave all those rights to the full corporation status, which allows them to do anything they choose. It took us over 10 years to find this piece of paperwork. We've done FOIA requests, which is the Freedom of Information Act here in the United States. We were denied every time we tried to put one in a different format. And so it took us 10 years to actually find this, going through all the laws. Once we found it, then it proves what we've been teaching, okay? There was no way anybody could deny what actually took place. And so here in the United States, for the United States to actually become a republic form of government, a true common law, sovereign nation once again, every state has to repeal the act that they initiated prior to 1967. Once that is done, every state would have standing within the United States Supreme Court due to what we refer to as the compact of the Constitution, because every state has to abide by the United States Constitution. Now, the difference between a state constitution here and our United States Constitution is one word, and it's a very unique word, okay? In the Constitution of the United States, we have what we refer to as unalienable rights. In other words, these are rights that are God-given, so to speak, creator source given to us.
Yeah, and it's a word that was created especially for the Constitution.
Yes, it is specifically designed for that. Well, when the states became states, they thought, well, you know what, this is nice, but we still have to be able to control through taxation without representation the general population. So we're going to change that word from un to in. So inalienable rights. I call them inalienable because they put a lien on us, okay? And so those rights, through definition of Webster's Black Law Dictionary for states, those rights can be sold or transferred. So think of that.
Yeah.
Okay?
So
if my right can be sold or transferred, I'm not sovereign.
exactly. So you're basically, you know, I don't like the word, but it is by definition then a servant.
Correct.
So in my quest for helping people to find and thrive in their sacred soul purpose, they have to reclaim their sovereignty.
Yes. Yeah, the sovereignty
what it is, it really is the question of freedom or servitude.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And you place even those two words together, okay? Freedom and servitude. As a spiritual light energy, we are free.
Yes.
As a flesh and soul energy, we're under servitude. Different energies, different frequencies, working at the same plane. One always remains in 3D, 4D, soul and flesh. Spirit and light can travel through all dimensions of planes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But at the same time, you know, my kind of, you know, understanding is that when you're talking about having a spirit to do something as a, you know, like a mission and vision, you are being guided by that, and you have a certain amount of values that you're basing yourself in. And those values have seen an enormous amount of degeneration and, you know, like devaluation. And over time, those values of family, of, you know, of the sanctity of your individual being and of life itself, they're culminating in a climax where people are not responding to the, you know, to the mere notion that a baby, when it's unborn or just about to be born, can still be aborted. There is something, you know, there is something that in me just rebels and says, you know, where is your understanding of the value and the high, let's say, importance of a new life being born?
And in our tradition, we have a real understanding compared to the general population when it comes to pre-life, okay? And some people tend to have a lot of difficulty with what I'm going to share with you.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Our traditional belief is, again, everything is predestined, okay? So I stepped in at the moment of breath. You chose your path and you're fulfilling your path, okay? We all have that energy because that's what we programmed ourselves prior to coming. Now, I've worked with a lot of people from alcoholism, drug addiction, suicidal, emotional trauma, possession of entities, things of this nature, you know, most of my life. And within our traditional belief, this is how we think it transpired, okay? So let it be through suicide. If, let's say, an individual had come down to this earth and did a suicide within himself or herself, okay? In our traditional belief, we believe that that person in a past life knew an individual that they were very close and in tune with. And when this individual committed suicide, they asked unknowingly, because words are very, very powerful. I wonder why he did that or she did that. I wonder what would be in the mind of somebody to do that. And by speaking those words, they created that frequency of vibration that they carried. They might not have done it that lifetime, but within lifetimes to come forward, it would happen again because they put that energy into that.
Wow. Yeah.
Form.
Makes sense.
Okay. And so that's how we look at things when it comes to suicide and even the aspect of abortion. I mean, abortion has been taking place, you know, since the beginning of time in some shape, way, or form in different cultures. It always hasn't been taking place within, you know, the structure of today. There's always been individuals within every tribe. And that's why I look at humanity. And that's how I've been taught. We all come from a tribe. Doesn't matter what your background is. Originally, we were a tribe. We were given the sacred knowledge of truth. We were given the sacred medicines of plant medicine, sacred medicines of healing within the plant medicine, the sacred medicines within the psychological, let it be mushrooms, peyote, ayahuasca, these types to reset the brain. We've been given all this knowledge over the past centuries here on Earth. As we progress forward here in the United States, it was around 1913, 1915, right in that aspect, where the pharmaceutical industry said no more plant medicine, no more shaman people helping people, things of this nature. And so they did away with all that, made it illegal. And so, you know, those are things that have transpired over time. But again, back to what we were talking about within the aspect of divine energies, we create what we become. If we have a definite issue on this platform in this lifetime, and we have fed that energy more than any other energy that we've dealt with in this lifetime, then we will receive that energy when we come back, if we choose to come back. And that's within our traditional beliefs.
Okay, well, you've been doing a lot of stuff, and I've seen that you also put out a documentary in 2016, or you were featured in it, which was a documentary about the culture of Native Americans, and also you know, I think really about the warriors and the braveness. And you explained in your part where you were featured that you had this this necklace with claws, where the claws would you know, turn outward for peace and inward for war. I believe that without understanding, you know, how all of this works, because I have no clue, but in the moment where you have this as a let's say a heirloom for, you know, passed down from one generation to another generation, I believe that there is an enormous spirit power attached to that.
Oh, there's many energies attached to hand-me-down energies. I'm going to say that right now. Okay, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, something that you refer to as sacred, or somebody's giving you a jacket. Okay, there's a lot of energies within that. In our traditional belief within those energies, and for those of you who are out there, think of this and just take it into consideration as a suggestion. Let's say you wake up this morning, okay, and you're having a great morning. You had your time with your loved one, or if you're by yourself, let it be by the fireplace, or, you know, a cup of coffee, listening to the birds sing, whatever transpires in your morning, and you're just joyful. And all of a sudden you decide, well, you know, I have to go somewhere, okay? So you leave your home and you're walking. Let it be walking to your car, or walking through the woods to the city, or walking on the sidewalk or the path where other people also walk, okay? And let's say prior to you walking, there was this individual who walked that same path that you walk, and they were having the most rotten day, and they were angry and frustrated, and they were just generally just not feeling in a good, positive energy. And you take that footprint and you step on it, okay? In our traditional belief, we call that an absorption, okay, of energy. And as you continue down that path, all of a sudden certain things start popping up in your mind that change your mental state, okay? What you're doing is you've actually stepped on an energy field. And the world is filled with energy fields. We have ley lines across this planet that are sacred. We have ley lines that are here for balance. We have ley lines here for humanity to awaken. And so we have all these different aspects. And so when you step on that and you absorb that, your day changes, okay? And so within our tradition, the family medicine that we had within our tribe were feathers and stones. And so when we look at feathers and stones, we look at it from a standpoint of frequency. Everything's a frequency. And so I'm just going to kind of stand up here and I'm going to just show you, this is one of our best stones. Wow. And she's a 60-pound double terminated smoky citrine, and we call her Surrender. Wow. And Surrender has been utilized to help people with many areas of addictions and areas of self-guilt. We have stones from all over the planet, and we always request people to please send us a stone. You know, doesn't cost anything. Just go out to your backyard, and if you find a stone that is calling you and you say, hey, I wanted to send it to BT, please do. Because we put them in our ceremonial medicine wheel that we have here outside. And it's a big medicine wheel. It's about 50 feet across and things like this. And so we have plenty of room for every stone on the planet that anybody would like to send us. and it's fun because it brings the energies in from your neck of the woods, so to speak, where we can go ahead and do our prayer and our ceremonies for healing and compassion and love to take place, as well as reuniting yourself within that community. And so there's different types. One of my favorite stones that I like to work with is called phenacite or phenakite. And phenacite or phenakite, depending on how you want to interpret it, okay, because there's, you know, different ways people speak it. In understanding crystals are in constant movement. So think of this.
They're almost liquid. They're considered a liquid.
Yes, they're constantly moving.
Yeah.
Well, phenacite and phenakite, according to science, unless this has changed, and this is my disclaimer, you know how science is, okay, is the fastest crystal in movement. And so we utilize it within our ceremonial aspect within our pyramid. And the pyramid here that we have has a rodent coil within in the center of it, encapsulated with all different minerals except aluminum. Many people have heard of organite and things of this nature. If you use aluminum, it's a dirty product. And the original inventor of organite never used aluminum, if you do the research on that. He thought it was a dirty product to utilize for stability. And so everything that we utilize is outside of that aspect of aluminum. And so when you work with the stones and you hold the stone, okay, many just place it in their hand, but they really don't squeeze it, okay? To get the full benefit and energy of a stone, let it be phenacite or ruby or dinosaur bone or whatever the case may be, to really understand that energy, you have to grab it and squeeze it as tight as you humanly can. Looks, yes. Is that a citrine?
Yeah. Yes,
that's beautiful. Beautiful piece. And stones work really well within the, you got to get it hard, and then put it right up next to your heart, you know, because the citrine is a really good area there of the inner solar plex energy, okay? And when we were talking, and you mentioned, you know, what kind of drew your attention was that the spirit and light was not the friend of the soul and the flesh. Think of it from this standpoint with your citrine, okay? Your citrine works with your gut energies, your solar plex energies. The solar plex in our traditional, the way I was taught, is a manipulator. Think of that, a manipulator. Sometimes we get the gut feeling where it's right on and we go with it. And sometimes we get the gut feeling and it's bad and we go through it anyway. Okay. You know, because we listen to it. Okay. And so the solar energy is that manipulator. And the citrine is one that actually kind of helps you put that back in balance. So when you're really going with that gut instinct, grab a piece of citrine and let it follow you. Let it direct you down that frequency of path of real righteousness, so to speak. You know, the right way to, you know, tackle this. Don't just jump into it, okay?
Yeah, no, I definitely get what you're saying. I definitely get what you're saying. I'm going to give you an example. I wanted to build a business based around one of my passions, which is yarn. And I was completely, you know, out and about looking for a location, and I almost had a place where I could just, you know, set up everything. Now, in the very last minute, and I really felt convinced that this is going to be it. This is going to be my path, and I'm just going to I'm going to stop all of this, you know, spiritual stuff. And I kind of was reminded about, you know, of Abraham, who was supposed to go someplace, and you know, he just did it, and I'm like, no, I'm not Abraham. So, you know, I went there, and then suddenly it all fell apart in a moment, because the guy said, no, I'm just going to use the location myself, so thank you very much for your interest. But I already had ordered all of the stuff. I already ordered all of the goods that I could put in. I had the furniture to put in. I just wanted to just move in and set up shop. And of course, you know how business is. You have to pay for these things in advance, right? So I was sitting there with all of these furnitures and yarns, and I kind of felt like, oh dear, what am I going to do with all of that now? Because there wasn't a location that I could just find like this in the moment. So, you know, things changed, obviously, when decisions were made. And this part of, you know, where you say, you know, you step into a footprint and you get this energy, this is what happened, you know. And this is why I always say, you know, if you're not aligned with your purpose, if you're not aligned with what it is that you've come here to do, and this is, you know, this was very evident that it wasn't the case for me. Something will happen and you're going to be realigned.
Yeah. And let me share how I got realigned, okay? I've had a really interesting journey here, being a walk-in the aspect of understanding humanity, okay? And so being brought into this family who was very, very well off, middle class, upper middle class, actually really didn't have to worry about too much. When we first home that we had was a small home. It was like 1,100 square foot, and eventually it went up to 6,000 square foot home. So, I mean, you know, that in itself kind of tells you, you know, the transitions of where I came from as far as home wise. But as an individual, I was the kid who was kicked out of school, every school that I attended, from grade school all the way up through high school, because I was the why kid. I would ask a question and the teacher would refer to her knowledge. And if it didn't sit right with me, I would go and I'd do the research at our home, because we always had a library. And when I found the truth, I would come back and I would ask her the question again, or him, and they would tell me the answer, which they had told me, and then I would tell them the facts. And so they didn't like being told the facts by a younger individual who was not the teacher. So that's why I got booted out of a lot of schools, every school. And I mean, it was a real interesting aspect of growing up. And so,
yeah, you literally told the teacher you're you know, uneducated and not qualified, so I'm going to fire you.
That's exactly what took place. You hit it right on the head of the nail there. And at the same time, they're like, well, I'm quitting. So you're not going to have that opportunity to fire me. I'm quitting, you know. But it was real interesting growing up. And then at the same time, when I got to be a certain age and I got into construction and ways of making a living, so to speak, I did really well within that aspect of teaching. And so I taught construction skills, how to operate heavy equipment, build roads and bridges and things like that for the federal highway and department and different things. And so for a period of time, I made some really good money and I started collecting old cars. And when I say old cars, I'm talking cars from the 1900s all the way up to like 1973. And so at one time I had way too many cars. And they all ran, and so my friends, if they had a car that broke down, they couldn't get to work, I'd stick them in an old jalopy and they'd go to work, you know? So it was always, you know, really a fun thing. But Spirit came to me and said that I was out of control and I needed to sell everything. And I was like, man, I got some really fancy cars here. I don't want to sell these cars, you know, and I didn't want to listen. So I sold everything except for 10. And I went off to work, and when I came back about a year later, those 10 were stolen. And so Spirit was like, I told you to sell all of them and you didn't listen. Okay. And so, you know, those are type of things. And then Spirit said, you know, once you sell everything, I want you to go ahead and spend all your money. And I'm like, well, if I spend all my money, I won't have any money. And Spirit's like, well, that's the point. I want you to have nothing. I want you to start from scratch. And so I did. And then Spirit asked me to be homeless. And so I went on the streets for 2 years. I lived off of the streets, literally. I ate out of garbage cans with homeless people. I did all that stuff. But it gave me an understanding of humanity, which I would never have ever received if I would have continued down the same path. And at the same time, a couple of years went by, Spirit says, okay, you've done what you'd like to do, and we're going to bring you back out. And now you can go on and do what you're guided to do some more within your traditional beliefs.
Yeah, so this is, but this is what I call the mystic's journey, because you are being guided, and your ego is going to pull you off, and your mystical path is going to pull you back in, because you're having a experience outside of what's in your contract. So you're basically being reminded that what you've come here to do is more important than what your ego is telling you to do. Right?
Yes, it is. Exactly. And again, the ego is that male energy, okay? Yes. It's the flesh and soul energy of creating and holding on to instead of creating and releasing and sharing.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's definitely, it was a very interesting path. And once I got back on my spiritual path and my journey, it's been just, I mean, I don't worry. I just continue down the path. We're blessed. My spouse and I are blessed every day. We continue to work with people all over the world, here locally as well. We do a lot of traveling. We had a couple of apprentices, and we went on a nation tour here in the United States and hit a bunch of different states and did talks and lectures and things of this nature. And then it got to a point where a lot of the festivals here in the United States was all about the money. It wasn't about bringing the spiritual knowledge anymore.
Right.
And it was really a sad direction once you recognized what had transpired. You know, because
I think this is exactly why I teach what I'm teaching, because the journey of a mystic who's going by the guidance of Spirit, if they go into business, it's not about the money. It's not about how much you're going to make with it. And I see so much spiritual materialism going on that I'm like, people, you know, this, if you're going to say that you're spiritual, you're going to have to prove it to me, because right now I'm seeing just money, you know? So I think this is, you know, this is really, really important to have that energy of abundance already. You don't have to chase the money for what it's worth, you know. So continue.
Yeah, and spirit will bless you. I mean, spirit's not just going to have you do all this work and not be blessed, okay?
Exactly.
But also, this is one of the biggest issues too that I run across when I work with spiritual individuals across the planet. Many don't feel that they should receive because they're so used to giving. And it's very difficult for them to receive. And in our traditional belief, we call it what we would refer to in English as the balance of exchange. Okay, if you spend an hour with somebody, it isn't necessarily that they have to give you an hour's worth of money. It isn't necessarily that they give you anything within the financial dollar system, but those individuals should recognize and respect the time that spirit has given them.
Yes.
And they should go ahead and do something in return. It doesn't matter if they bring you a stone. I tell everybody, hey, if you don't have anything to give, just bring me a rock. Okay. You know, and which, you know, I mean, you know, who can't bring a rock? You know what I'm saying? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, just do something, you know, because then at least you take ownership and responsibility towards the individual who's helping you. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we tend to forget, because I've been blessed with little and I've been blessed with a lot. And it isn't the difference, it's how it's interpreted. Like some people who have globs of money, who bless people with little bits of money, is definitely a karmic energy that they will receive down the road, in my belief. Okay.
I believe so too, yes.
And if you have a little bit of money, or whatever the case may be, you might have, you know, 10 dozen eggs. It doesn't have to be the money. But if you give it to somebody that's, you know, requires it or utilizes it more than what you normally, then you're going to be blessed much more. And so, you know, you have to have that exchange of balance. It's not about, you know, direction. It's about truth.
Absolutely. Now, you know, because of the work that you do, I believe that there is a lot of, let's say, confusion about shamanism because of a lot of neo-shamanistic tendencies that are, you know, being practiced. And I've heard so many things where I go like, you know, how do you see these new schools coming up, and how do you, you know, because I think there's a lot of, you know, confusion that's really going on there, and I'd like to just clarify some things, you know, because I really think that, you know, just because there is a course about shamanism, that doesn't make you a shaman just after that, you know. I think you've got to have a little bit more of it's like, you know, it's like you know, yoga, the original yoga that's been passed down through the centuries, and what's being practiced in yoga schools today is just not the same thing. So, you know, I think you know what I'm trying to get at.
I do, exactly. This is kind of how I look at any type of education, let it be within the spiritual realm. Okay. First of all, I think you have to go to somebody who has the experience. Example, if I'm married and I go to, don't take offensive out there or anybody out there, and if I go to a priest who's never been married, how's he going to give me marriage advice? I mean, I'm just being realistic, okay? That's an example. And there's many examples a person could throw out there. I honestly believe to be really on the spiritual identity aspect, you have to have the experience. And so I think that's where, again, the shamanistic approach is through experience and knowledge, because we've been through it, we've done it, we've lived it, we are associated with it. It's not something that we just pulled out of a book or we're just taught. And because compassion can't be taught.
No.
It just can't. And so that's one of the aspects that we have to recognize. There's many schools out there. I comment on a few of them every now and then when I see a post and I see somebody being very egotistical because they just, you know, received their diploma, so to speak. And I'm like, you know, there's not a diploma in the spiritual realm. I hate to tell you, you know, you don't get any diplomas, you know, and sometimes we don't even get the kudos, just so you know, okay? Because spirit already knows all this stuff. I mean, it's
There
not
you
a
go.
matter
Yeah. Yeah.
of us recognizing that all of a sudden, oh boy, I got a diploma. It's not like that. And,
Yeah.
you know, personally myself, I don't believe in education in that aspect. And all of a sudden you get a diploma or you get, you know, the opportunity to claim yourself as a shaman. I think you have to be able to actually start, be an apprentice, work with somebody, and not just do it on a temporary basis, like, you know, hey, you know, I'm there for a short period of time and now all of a sudden I'm a shaman. I mean, you have to walk the path. I mean, I was educated from the age of 5. I mean, so, you know, and when you look at it from the standpoint of time, I mean, when I was first brought into this world, I see color and frequency and vibration on everything living and dead. And so I can read people's auras and chakras, and I can tell you if you're ill and things of this nature. And I take no credit on for it whatsoever. I give it all up to spirit. It's been a blessing. But when I was young and I couldn't communicate, it was frightful.
Yeah.
I mean, because I could see somebody's energies and they'd come into the room as a young boy and I would just like freak out. I'd cry, I'd scream, I'd run around, I'd get away, whatever the case may be, if it was something that I didn't, you know, really understand. And then when I was able to start speaking and communicating, then it was much easier because my grandmothers could guide me. And so that was a big difference. And so when we left the reservation, our family, here in the United States, it was very difficult to be an American Indian, okay? And so most American Indians hid their identity, just so you know.
Yeah.
Because again, it was too difficult to be outside of the reservation. And so many, like in northern New Mexico, said they were Spanish or they were Mexican. And in reality, they weren't, you know, truly.
Yeah.
But to be able to be in society without being judged or put down or things of this nature, they had to hide their identity. And so, and that happened with my grandparents as well. I mean, they went through some struggles too within their identity, so that way they could remain true within our culture, you know, to protect it. And so those are some of the things that, you know, the past generations have done, as I'm sure in your culture as well.
Yeah. I think what, you know, the people now are kind of afraid of is that something like that repeats itself, not just for one people, but for the entire human race. And what I believe is the most important part is that you have to reclaim your sovereignty and basically set up your own shop to become your own identity, and your, you know, to have a very, very clear connection to spirit, so that you receive the guidance and the, you know, that you're being that you're being your own sovereign being on this planet as a you know, spiritual person. So everybody out there who's you know, working for a company, they're giving their time of their lives to that company. The company remunerates them with money. Money is something you can, you know, get on every corner, but the time of your life, you can't get that back ever.
Yeah.
So this is why I say, you know, if you're not sure what your life purpose is and what you're really here to do, this is the first place to start, you know, to basically go into your heart and seek that place where you're being guided towards that spiritual goals that you've come to explore and to expand and to experience. That doesn't mean that you have to set up shop for it, you know, but at the same time, you know, if that is in your cards, if you are being dealt the card of the entrepreneur, you know, this is something that I would definitely at this point in our history, you know, support and say, go for it, do it now, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing too that we tend to forget as traditionalists. Okay, because in our early times, in our past lives, because many of us who are shamans have been shamanic in many past lives. And that's why we know and we do what we do. However, if we would have had the technology back in the past lives, we would have been utilizing, because we're not stupid people, okay? We're not individuals who always remain in the dark ages, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, if we had the technology back in the days prior to, we would have been utilizing them. And so that's one thing I've ran across people where they say, well, BT, you got a website, you're promoting this, you're promoting that. If people really need to come see you, they should be able just to find them in their heart and they'll be guided. Well, if they're finding it in their heart and they're being guided, what difference does it make if it's walking the path through the web, through a phone book, you know, if there isn't any phone books anymore, you know, things of this nature. And so that's one of the things that I think, you know, people have to recognize, that, you know, technology within the movement of knowledge is so important.
Yes.
And just like today, I mean, we're reaching out to, you know, millions of people with that opportunity if they take the time to listen.
Absolutely.
And, you know, where years and years ago, it would never have happened. And so our advancement back to this spirituality of humanity and breaking the traditional roots of slavery, one would say, is being done at a much faster time now because of technology.
Absolutely. Yeah. But, you know, but the illusion that we're being fed is that, you know, that there is no hope for humanity, and that there is only, you know, one kind of outcome. And you know, the truth of it all is that even if, you know, and this is information I received, that even if those two possible timelines coincide, that, you know, that one of the kind of darker scenarios that are panning out come into play, there is still the outcome, the final outcome, one of the light, and the one of, you know, of hope and transcendence. And so there is absolutely nothing that needs to be feared but fear itself, which is basically compounding into this scenario and giving that scenario more power.
Right. Yeah. And take this into consideration, okay? Or you're familiar who Martin Luther King is?
Yes.
Okay. Martin Luther King was a civil rights leader here in the 60s, here in the United States, okay? And one of his greatest speeches was, "I have a dream." Okay? I have a real problem with that speech. I mean, it was a beautiful speech, but if I could go back in time and change one word out of that whole speech, it would be dream. And I would have said reality.
Yeah.
I have a reality. Because he implemented that with all the energy that was supporting him. It remains a dream still today.
And exactly this is why I say that when somebody is hoping for something, rather than hoping for it, expecting it as a reality, expecting it as a given, and affirming it as having it received so that it can manifest. And this is, you know, this is the teaching of the law of attraction, which has, you know, been so misinterpreted again, which is also the teaching of the Bible. The Bible, in, you know, in the purest sense of their definition of faith, is to believe in the unseen and expect it to be a reality.
Yeah, and that's one of the most beautiful aspects too, because when we look at the American Indian traditions, in most cases, it's very similar to Buddhism, Hinduism, all these other aspects of truth and reality. And so, you know, there's many cross sections. And so that's why I always tell people, you know, it's not the identity of ethnicity that you carry today. Because in our traditional belief, we believe everybody's been every ethnicity.
Yeah,
once.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that too. And, you know, I was raised a Catholic, so, but, you know, from what I understand and how I see things and how I'm being guided, and, you know, the the intuition that I have is that all of the limitations and all of this fear-based teaching and all of this, doubt, shame, and all of those things, those are, mechanisms that keep you detached from spirit, so that you're not able to sink your heart into it and receiving that guidance. And so there is let's say, an agenda attached to it, to disempower people, to not have them rise, to not have them in their divinity, and to not have them come to the level of enlightenment. And that's why they're calling the teaching of the occult, of, like the occult being something hidden, Why is it hidden? Because it empowers the person who's actually able to understand and use it. Because it will give it freedom.
Paganism. Yeah, and it's like the term paganism. When you look at pagan, when you look at the definition, it means someone who thinks outside of the box, basically,
right.
Not the same culture of religion. They're thinking outside. And so, there's all these definitions of religious aspects that actually have true knowledge within themselves. And people are able to utilize it to rise up within their spiritual identity. And I think the most beautiful aspect right now is that we're seeing humanity's consciousness either make the left side of spirit, or they remain within the right side of flesh.
Right.
And I think as we progress forward here, I look back at the Mayan and the Aztecs of the 2012, revolution, so to speak. They talked about a awakening, a change. And if you take the frequency understanding of belief, the way we utilize it in our tradition, if the cosmos were aligned in 2012, it doesn't mean that we're going to feel it in 2012, because the stars we see today, most of them are gone. They've already burnt out. We're seeing their reflection. So it takes X amount of time. And so in our tradition, we believe that 8-year time frame of the awakening is of today. It's taking 8 years for that energy to reach us here in humanity on our planet, not in our solar system, but just in our planet. And so each planet around us within the solar system creates a frequency. Each area has a frequency outside of our solar system.
Exactly.
And so, that's something that many people don't understand, because again, they're not doing their own personal research to find out where their own spirituality has evolved to.
Absolutely. And I believe that, once I found out that Catholicism was basically a conglomerate of so-called other religions, just being rebranded as a, kind of let's combine them all so that we can get them all under one hat and, make sure that we have the power to guide them. And so for me, it was very clear that a truly spiritual person reclaims also their spiritual sovereignty, and that they can then be united in spirit with so many different people, that the spirit is not defined by a worldly religion, but a, purely like consciousness level unity. And this is what we're heading towards, the unity consciousness and the understanding of oneness with all there is, with the stones, with the trees, with the birds, with everything. And I think the shamans and the Native Americans already knew that back then. So we're coming full circle, really.
Yes, we are. We're definitely coming full circle. A lot of my friends, because I do the political aspect of governance and things like this, they're like, BT, you might be the part of the circle of return where, they encapsulate and enslaved you guys, threw you basically in a FEMA camp, You know, because that's really what a reservation is. I mean, technically, you know, you're told how much you can have food wise. You get X amount of dollars, you get X amount of education. I mean, it's no different than a FEMA camp. And I tell people that the American Indian was the very first socialistic experiment in the United States. And, you know, if you look at it from that standpoint, and they're still believing that it's the right way, you know, because again, most American Indians, you know, think in that perspective when it comes to the political realm, and they vote that direction. And so, you know, and a lot of the things that I teach people that are American Indians are difficult for them to receive because of their upbringing, because again, everybody has an opportunity. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what family background you come from. Everybody has an opportunity. And actually, we're given 3 types of opportunity in our spiritual realm. And the question is, do we recognize those 3 areas of opportunity as they are manifested and given to us by spirit? Many of us, you know, receive it and recognize it, but many turn their way away from it. You know, they don't follow that direction that spirit's guiding them to do. And so it's very interesting when we look at, you know, where the American Indian was of the past, where he is and she is of today. And I've challenged in every American Indian reservation since the 70s to prove to me that they are a sovereign nation. And not one can, because I can show every one of them that they're not. And I can show them on paperwork, I can show them under law, I can show them through every aspect that they deal with within their commercial standing. And that's how it is. Every reservation is actually a commercial entity. Think of that. So, I mean, you know, there's so much going down the rabbit hole. And again, those of us who are here today, like yourself and others that I'm sure are watching, you know, we've been through this rabbit hole many, many times. And that's why we're here today, because this is the apex of humanity to resolve, to be able to come together and unite, to be able to come and recognize within ourselves the true purpose of humanity. And the true purpose of humanity is to remain within spirit, not to remain within any other energy.
Yes, that's why I'm calling out to all of the soul leaders out there to come into their full power so that they can connect from the heart center and unite in spirit and become that spiritual sovereignty that we have been given, you know, to embody that. And so thank you very much for your time. I think we're already over the hour, and I think we have so many things more to talk about. We can repeat this at time. And so I'd like to give you just another possibility to plug your details, and perhaps you have a workshop coming up, and you know, just let people know what you're up to and what's coming next.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and we just moved here to Florida. Okay, so we're just getting everything situated now. We figured it'd be about another 2 weeks before we get our home and our everything in order, so to speak. We just received our furniture here this last week. We were on an air mattress for 2 months, so you know, because of the COVID and the transition of moving vans and all this kind of stuff. But once here, after we get everything set up, if you go to our website balancedtoe.com, I normally have a little section on the left side there will tell you what we have coming up and things of that nature. So just check in every now and then, and if you have any questions, if something here, you know, set with you really well, and if something sat here with you that didn't sit with you very well, and you have a question, there's a section there that you can fill out. And I normally get back with people within a 72-hour period because I have so many different things going within that aspect. But just know that I do get them and I do get back. And if you have something that says, you know, it bounced back to you, don't worry, I'm sure I'll get it. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes the spirits that aren't in the most positive energy, they know how to manipulate the electronics, as most of you know. So
yeah, definitely.
Just know the spirit will bring it to me.
Absolutely. And if there is one message you would like those who are watching this to receive, what would that be?
I would say open your heart to the discussion that we've just had. Allow yourself to truly become one within yourself, identity divided between flesh and soul and spirit and life, and remain within the love and compassion that we all carry.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I wish you a wonderful time settling in and a wonderful rest of your day. And I talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you again and have a great day.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
you too. Bye-bye.